We're live. Hello, everybody. It is Chris. I'm your host. Thank you for showing up to my live show. This is the weekly Spinner Rack. And on this show, I'm just adjusting some computer stuff here, and I'm going to move this out of my way. I will give you a quick review of everything I've read in comics from the past week. And then I will do some drawing while taking your questions. I've also got some comic book news of the week, so we've got topics that we'll be discussing here. Show usually goes about 2 hours, and this is just an opportunity for us all to talk comics and stuff like that. And I just want to acknowledge, look at this. Thank you to Chris Sears for a super chat. And he says, 10 people waiting and 9 thumbs up. Your public adores you. That's very kind. Thank you. And that's pretty exciting. Yes, this channel, a little bit of a milestone here. This channel is now big enough that YouTube has allowed me to monetize it. That's good for me. You know, I'm trying to sort of do this as a career, taking steps towards that. Let me welcome everybody that I'm seeing in the chat room. A lot of people. Hello, Andrew, Me Lucky Charms, James, Aldi, my sister. Hello, Jean. Robinson Herrera Camacho. Oh, you sent in artwork for the past episode. Thank you, Robinson. Daryl, X, Brian. There's a bit of a delay, so what you're seeing in the live chat versus what I'm reading, you know, count on somewhere that I think it's going to be between 10 to 15 seconds, something along those lines. Just giving you a small heads up. But thank you all for joining. I love seeing this mix of familiar names and new people. This is really exciting. Hello, Alex. Hello, Mitografia. Hello, Dan Hendricks. I'm going to miss some people if I keep doing this, but I wanted to at least acknowledge some of the people that showed up right at the beginning of the show. But some people will be watching this once it's archived, once it's not live, so I want to keep things moving. Hey, my good buddy Hooded Cobra Commander 788 is here, and by the way, that channel is about reviewing vintage G.I. Joe stuff, but he does stuff related to that too. And today he uploaded a video where he reviews one of the Marvel G.I. Joe comics by Larry Hama. And I believe the artist was Frank Springer. Anyway, if you like comics, he does have an episode up today about comics. So I'm always happy to plug my buddy. Hello also, Bukaya619. Hello from India. Oh, well, thank you so much for... Geez, it must be pretty early there, right? I don't know. Skunk Ape, exactly, yes. Hello, Sam Fonseca. Well, let me get into the first topic of the day. I always take a look at the comics that I personally picked up in the last week. Not a huge list, so let me start with this. There was a one-shot for Nocterra, and I've talked before about how Nocterra just sort of came out of the blue and really interested me for its world building and for its dynamic characters who I could relate to, even though it was a weird sort of sci-fi horror story. This is a one-shot that gives us a possible origin for one of the main villains in this story, which is called Blacktop Bill. And the artwork in this, instead of being done by regular artist Tony S. Daniel, is done by pro Dennis Cowan, who, if you know, maybe you know him from his work on Milestone stuff back in the 90s. Yeah, it basically... Blacktop Bill is just an unrepentant, over-the-top serial killer who is not intimidated at all by the monsters that inhabit this world. Everybody else is terrified. This is a scary world where the sun seems to be out. Nothing's freezing, but there's no sunlight. Something weird is happening with the world that we don't understand yet. What is important is that if you're out of the light, and it doesn't have to be natural light, artificial light is fine, but if you're out of the light, anything living will slowly turn into something monstrous and be permanently changed that way. So people live in cities with lights on 24/7, little towns, I should really say. And the main character in the book makes her living by driving people in her big rig between towns. It's because it's a pretty risky pretty risky job. Anyway, the artwork is not bad. It isn't like something that speaks to me in a huge way, but I did like more of the world building. This is good if you already like Nocterra. Probably not great as a jumping on point if you haven't read it yet. Let's move forward. Next thing I read I did really like, and that was Inferno, which is Jonathan Hickman basically working on his X-Men storyline, moving it forward in some massive, massive ways. What you need to know already is like always summarized on the first page. I kind of like that. Artwork by Valerio Schiti and Stefano Caselli, gorgeous. I take it that they're Italians by those names, but that is just a guess. Gorgeous artwork, really cool story where, you know, all of the mutants in the X-Men universe, good guys and bad guys, have finally allied and lived together on a mutant island. They've got their own nation. And Magneto and Professor X definitely on the same page, but they didn't want to bring back Destiny, a mutant who can see into the future, because she would know that Moira McTaggart has the mutant power to reincarnate herself. So she has like lived about 9 previous lives where mutant kind always gets wiped out by either humanity or artificial intelligence, or both together. And they're trying something new, having all the mutants work together. But these guys hate her and they're trying to kill her. The death of Moira X. It's pretty wild, like, stuff that really shakes up the status quo, but this particular issue is kind of a good, straightforward payoff to everything that's been happening. A bunch of action with Magneto fighting some super, super advanced Sentinels. The Nimrod Sentinel and the Omega Sentinel. It's good stuff. And then there's just some twists and turns, because there have been secrets that have been being kept. I really like this. I loved Powers of X House of 10 was a 12-issue series that Jonathan Hickman wrote, totally revised like where the X-Men stuff was going. You know, really good jumping on point if you've never read any X-Men stuff before. And then his ongoing story in X-Men was fine, but it didn't really engage me. It wasn't moving the narrative forward very quickly. And that's probably because they also have all those related titles. X-Factor, X-Force, Marauders, you know, you name it. There's a bunch of mutant titles. And they're doing new stuff with that world. It kind of felt like the main X-Men title was going slow. But now this Inferno series, it's just issue 4. Again, moving the plot forward very quickly. Really exciting. Really exciting. Not the last new thing. Oh, look. So much for this being a 9.8 or anything like that. Can you see this little tear? So be it. You know, I don't buy this stuff for the investment, but that tear is enough to bump this down several points. That's too bad. Not a big deal, though. If I really cared, you can still get this one on shelves. This is timeless, and it really works mostly as a one-shot about Kang the Conqueror, a time-traveling villain. And it focuses purely on him. What he's done in this is he has sort of kidnapped as a companion this Russian professor who studies superheroes and supervillains. Kang knows that in the future, this guy will write a book about how Doctor Doom is the all-time most influential villain. And Kang is like, no, I am, and I'm going to take you with me, and you're going to see why. I'm going to take you with me for a week and just show how great I am. And it's interesting, and it involves all sorts of weird time travel shenanigans and stuff like that. He visits like this weird dead timeline, or I should say dying timeline, and the artwork's great. The first half of it is by a guy named, I'm just opening it up here. First half is by Kev Walker. There's some pages, I guess, that are by Greg Land. I didn't really pick up on those somehow. But then Mark Bagley does the second half of this. And this is basically a one-shot that you can, like, just read as is. It's a cool story where you actually get to see some characterization behind a supervillain. But the reason I picked it up is this. And some of you will know what this is and some won't. After these time-traveling adventures, the professor gets back and he looks into his notes, and he's had like a vision. He's had like an image, and he's written it down. And if you recognize that, that is the logo of Miracle Man, which has a very convoluted comic book history, which I might get into later while we're drawing. Suffice to say, the version of Miracle Man that's popular is a really cool story. It's its own thing. The popular version is one that was written by Alan Moore and then later by Neil Gaiman, which Marvel actually now owns. Marvel owns the rights. And I guess they're apparently going to bring Miracle Man into the Marvel universe. Feels weird. I'm very trepidatious about how that could work well, because Miracle Man was definitely some of Alan Moore's deconstructionist writing, basically some of his earliest, where you're like, hey, what if a godlike character like Superman, because he's basically got the power of Superman, what if he existed in the real world? What are the implications of that? And it's some dark stuff. It's really good drama. Trust me, the original Miracle Man comics, I shouldn't say the original. The originals are sort of more from the 50s through the 70s. The Alan Moore stuff from the 80s, it's fantastic. It's really, really good. But do we need sort of a realistic Superman in the Marvel Universe? Does this actually add anything to the Marvel continuity? I understand it from a sales perspective. People are like, oh, I've always heard about Miracle Man and it's really good. So I guess I want to see some new Miracle Man stuff. I can understand that. And maybe it will be good. I'm going to hold off full judgment until it comes out. But here's the thing. Marvel already has a character that they can do this kind of stuff and have done this stuff with. Actually, two characters that I can think of. There's Hyperion, who is basically a one-to-one for Superman. And in fact, there's a whole Justice League of America one-to-one that comes from a parallel reality. The Avengers have basically had a bunch of stories with them. And now they've been used in the Marvel Universe plenty. There's Hyperion. And then they created the Sentry, who again is got the power of 10,000 suns or something. He's essentially Superman in terms of power ability. I sort of feel like, okay, what story do you want to tell with Miracle Man within the Marvel Universe that you couldn't use Hyperion or the other guy whose name I already forget, Sentry? I hope that makes sense. I would love to see Miracle Man's story on its own continued and completed with the right creative team. I would be interested in that, because just to be clear, Miracle Man was never completed. But I think, somebody also said Blue Marvel is also a Superman stand-in. Yeah, to a degree he is. I think he's got a little bit of a different personality, and he's more of a scientist guy, but in terms of power level, you certainly could tell a Superman story with Blue Marvel. So I'm just saying, Marvel has access to characters that can function in the role that Miracle Man does. Nevertheless, that is the first published reference to Miracle Man entering the Marvel Universe. So I decided to pick it up. A little bit of speculation, a little bit of curiosity. I will say this was actually really good. In fact, I would probably call this my pick of the week. Yeah, it's good art and it's a good standalone story. You get a full, big, thick story here. Good artwork, good story. I sincerely recommend this. I don't know that I'll recommend whatever they do with Miracle Man down the road, but this is a good standalone book. And I even though I really like both of these books, this one surprised me. I enjoyed this the most out of what I read this week for new stuff. Here's the last new thing I got this week, but to be honest, I only got it because this is a variant cover done by Bill Sienkiewicz. And I won't say that it's Sienkiewicz's, best work or anything. It's not bad. It's just, nothing necessarily groundbreaking. And Sienkiewicz is capable of doing groundbreaking stuff. But I'm a huge fan of Bill Sienkiewicz's artwork. And I will buy almost anything I see at a reasonable price that he's worked on. He just really interests me. This has got 3 standalone short stories using sort of the character of Elektra in various settings. It's hit and miss. I guess the first story where like it's art by Mark Bagley and it's some good artwork by him, and she's turned into a vampire, but it's a short story. It's fine. It's fine. I wouldn't go out of your way for it. Well, I don't think that that'll necessarily ruin Miracle Man in the sense that, like, the good stuff about Miracle Man has already been done. And we didn't think we'd ever get any more, so, you know, whatever. I just don't know what... I don't know what they need him for this kind of a story. I also got a couple back issues. I picked up Rom Space Night #1. This is written by Bill Mantlo. Someday I'm going to do an episode on him. Kind of a weird, like, writer that, like, would take whatever Marvel gave. You know, like, he would take a bunch of licensed sort of comics that weren't necessarily seen as the cream of the crop. But he built some really interesting lore with Rom Space Night. And this book went for several years. I want to say, like, 7 or 8 years, at least. That's a pretty good run. Basically all by one writer. This first artwork inside is by Soule Buscema, and he was really good in the 70s and 80s especially, I thought. Based on a toy. A single toy. That was all there was. There was really no lore or anything. Bill Mantlo created almost everything. But because it was licensed, Marvel doesn't really have the rights to Rom. They have the rights to all of his supporting cast and villains. They created everything that goes around him, but not Rom himself, even though this is set in the Marvel universe. So they can't, like, reprint this stuff, and no one else can tell stories with him. And people are always like, oh, could he show up in Guardians of the Galaxy? He'd be a fantastic fit in that, but just doesn't seem like it's likely to happen. I also picked this up. This is just because I'm weird, I guess. If you've been watching my other channel, Comic Tropes, for a while, you know a couple years ago I did an episode on the Kool-Aid Man comics, and specifically I reviewed a Kool-Aid Man comic that Archie did, but Marvel also did Kool-Aid Man comics. Marvel did 3, and Archie did 3. Like, the rights changed at a certain point. I think Marvel was first. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's pretty dumb, but I have this... probably bizarre is the nicest way you could refer to it, but I like licensed comics, and I like PSA comics, as in, like, comics that are telling you don't do drugs or wear a seatbelt. You know, I do episodes when I come across good ones of those, and licensed comics where they're just, like, trying to force the character into a story. I mean, what personality or world does Kool-Aid Man have? In this story, he's completely invulnerable. Like, these guys, the bad guys, are the thirsties. They just try to make people thirsty. And at one point, they're in a spaceship and they shoot Kool-Aid Man with a laser. They give it, like, full blast. He's not affected by it at all. You know, there's nothing that can stop him. It's weird. The last thing I've been reading this week, I've been rereading Saga. So you can actually get all 55 issues in one single volume. Images had this out for a couple years. And Saga has been on hiatus while Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples have worked on a few other projects. But it's coming back this month. I love this book, but I love everything Brian K. Vaughan does, and I pretty much love everything Fiona Staples does. It may not be your cup of tea. It is set in sort of a space fantasy type world. Not quite like Star Wars, though. Not quite like Star Wars. But it is about, like, a world at war between two races. And there's, like, people that have wings and people that have horns. And anyway, these two fell in love and had a baby, and they're leaving the war behind. Although, like, both sides are always after them and send bounty hunters and all sorts of army men. Artwork is gorgeous. Story keeps surprising you with the directions it goes. And it's such a huge epic story. And it's, even though we start by knowing Marco and Alana, the parents, it's all being told by their daughter to us at like some unknown point in the future. She's sort of like telling us the story of her birth and her origins. All I can say is, personally, I sincerely love this book. It's been a blast rereading it. I can't recommend it enough, but I know it's not for everybody. But a lot of people do like it. It's really, it's a big deal that it's coming back finally. It's a really big deal. So don't be surprised if at some point I do an episode specifically about Saga. Because I've only really touched on Brian K. Vaughan once when I talked a little bit about Runaways, but I like him as a writer very, very much. So anyway, that's been my favorite thing that I've been reading overall. It's just not new. I've just been rereading this, getting ready for that to come. And by the way, you may have actually seen some Saga references, even if you haven't read this book. There is currently a Taco Bell commercial where two sort of nerdy people are in cosplay at a subway station, and they notice each other, a boy and a girl, and they are cosplaying as Marco and Alana. So, yeah, kind of weird, obviously, to have like such a direct reference to a creator-owned image book in a Taco Bell commercial. But hey, more power to the creative team for getting that payday. Anyway, that's everything I read this week. Curious to hear what you guys came across. It was not easy for me to get my comics this week, I will say that. It snowed tremendously about a week ago. A little over a week ago here in the Pacific Northwest in the Seattle area. And what happened was that delayed all of the different delivery services, not just the Postal Service, but UPS and FedEx were both significantly delayed. There was not a new comic book day for Wednesday. It was, I think, well, the Marvel stuff came in on Wednesday, but DC was Thursday, and Image and everybody else was Friday. It's November 10th. I am drinking Kool-Aid in my kitchen. Anyway, yeah, I know about that Graphos XP. I've got some comic book news of the week that I will be discussing in just a moment. Actually, I don't want to use this pen yet. I want to use a thicker one. As far as what I'm wearing, by the way, this weird fluffy beast, I am in a robe because I still have no heat in my house. I can't afford to fix what's broken here, which is significant. And hopefully in the near future I can. Basically over the summer, I have central air, and the machine, the air unit, literally exploded. It was so hot that it got overwhelmed, and it literally exploded. It threw some chemicals into the vents throughout the house that are sort of acidic, and so it's going to be very expensive to repair. But without that forced air through the house, that means that I have no heat right now. It has been very cold, so we are walking around, my fiance and I, in robes all the time, and have like some space heaters so that we stay alive. It's been a tough winter, but it is what it is. We're gonna get another estimate, but the first estimate was $20,000 to repair it all. That's a lot of money. That's a lot. We shall see how that goes. I am drawing Wolverine circa Weapon X today because I've really wanted to do an episode on Barry Windsor Smith at some point. And so anyway, this is just me engaging in some of that. Like thinking about Barry Windsor Smith. Great artwork. It was minus 31 Celsius in my city for a few days. Wow, that sounds rough. I'm in the same boat. Furnace is out and can't afford to replace it. Over 20 years old. They're very expensive. They can be very expensive. This artwork inspired by the new Barry Windsor Smith book. Not inspired directly by his book. What book is that? I think I don't know about it, but I would be interested in it. We've got enough to, like, obviously, like, pay our bills and get food and stuff like that. It's just one big expense of $20,000 is no small chunk of change. But if you're so inclined, and I'm not telling you should, I believe my channel now allows for super chats. So if you were in the position, I finally picked up Monsters and started reading it. I hope you'll like it, X. I really liked Monsters. That was my book of the year for 2021. Hard to believe we're already in 2022. I know people say this kind of stuff every year. That sounds futuristic to me. When I was in college, it was the late 90s, and Conan O'Brien had a late night talk show that I loved. I watched it pretty much always. And one of their recurring gags was in the year 2000, where they made like silly predictions about what was going to happen in the future, the far future of the year 2000. And now we're like 22 years past that. It's crazy. Weren't you talking about his new book, Monster, the other week? Yes. I thought you meant an art book. Excuse me. Monster is fantastic. Monster is fantastic. Strongly recommended. There was quite a bit of comic book news this week, and I made a point of actually taking some notes so that I have topics to talk about at this point. Let me pull up what my notes were and go to the first topic. Folks, pretend that there's some music, and we're going to do the first news topic of the night. I really wish I had, like, some sort of a drum beat or something. Topic of the night! And, like, a little graphic shoots across. I love late night talk shows. In the year 2000. In the year 2000. That's what I went. Yeah, everybody knows. Good. Oh, all right. First piece of news that I will talk about is the comic book industry has its first ever union. It has successfully been voted on. And that is the Comic Book Workers United Union, which consists of, I believe, well, it's all the staff at Image Comics. They voted, and a majority won, a super majority won, passed that they will be part of a union. Interestingly, Image Comics has not acknowledged their existence yet. And my opinions are still a little bit of confusion more than anything else. Just to be clear, this union is not for creatives. This is a union for the production staff who work at Image. And, of course, everybody deserves good working conditions and stuff. But my understanding was they wanted to pass the union so that they had a say in what gets published by Image. And I'm not 100% sure if that should be the kind of thing done by committee. I don't know. I'd love to hear more about the argument for why that's necessary. I just haven't heard the argument yet for it. I don't think that they've formally posted their idea. Oh, wow. Look, a super chat here. I'm always going to pause for a super chat. Thank you, Steve. Steve sends $10 and says, hey, Chris, I enjoyed your shoujo manga video. I learned a lot from it. Thank you so much. That's really kind of you. I thought that it was going to be a real niche that watched that video, but fortunately it's doing decent. It's doing fine. Let's see. I feel you are the Werner Herzog of YouTube comics content creators. You find a topic you like and do research and then present it. That's very true. That's very true. That is how I sort of approach it. And I'm excited for the next episode I'm making, by the way, and I'm going to get back to my topic, but my next episode will involve looking at a creator and their work, but also the legal rumblings behind the scenes, lawsuits with big companies, fighting over the rights for things. It's a little dramatic, and I don't want to turn myself into a drama channel, but every once in a while it is interesting to look at things that have actually happened in the comic book industry and see what we can learn from it. You know, I don't know if we can always make a judgment call as to like this person was right and this person was wrong, but we can at least acknowledge, hey, this was a big event that happened, and by being aware of it, maybe we can avoid some of the same mistakes. You know, maybe we can find a path forward in the future that is a little more straightforward. Anyway, so yeah, Image Comics has a union. And I'm not 100% clear either on exactly what the implications are for us as the reader. Presumably nothing, and that it's all behind the scenes. You know, I'm conflicted. I think that unions have their place. I certainly think that, say, a Walmart or an Amazon that employs tons of people, those people need to be able to collectively bargain for the best wages and benefits that they should be entitled to, as compared to just, you know, picking up scraps. I do think that, like, in big cases like that, in creative fields, I don't want anyone taken advantage of, so I see some of the advantage, but this, again, is not for the creators. This is for the production staff, and I'm not clear on if they were, like, somehow felt like they were being mistreated, or if they just wanted more of a say in what Image does. So it will be interesting in the coming weeks to see that fleshed out and to learn a bit more about what the implications are of this new union. But it is the first successful, like, union in comics, and creators have been lobbying for a union for a long time. You know, when you've got a union, you've got a group that can buy, for instance, group rate health and life insurance, things like that, benefits essentially. And by being a member, you can opt in to getting something much more affordable than you do as an individual. And trust me, I have learned, now that I've gone part-time at my job and full-time on YouTube, you know, I sort of switched them. Oh my God, is health insurance expensive on your own? When it's just a portion of what you pay for a group policy through work, that is a tremendous benefit. And I always knew that, but this is the first time I'm now buying insurance on my own, and it is expensive. Awful. I wonder if the staff was being treated poorly and this union was a response to that. Maybe. I don't know. Let's see. Moritaka says, "Hey Chris, I'm planning on making a Patreon for people to support me on my comic art. Do you have any advice for how it should be set up?" I would start with, like, kind of like low amounts, low tiers, I should say, of like how much you want people to donate, because I am personally, like, hoping for, like, more, like, a lot of people, like, if I could get a bunch of my people that watch my videos to simply pledge $1, I'd be doing fine if a lot of them could do that. You know, some people that have a Patreon have set it up so that they can give good rewards. I'm so busy that I've never felt like I am in a position to give too much in terms of tangible rewards. I've got ideas and I've got plans, but the time to implement that, it's very time consuming. If I got to a point where I was making enough money on just YouTube that I could quit, you know, the day job essentially, then that would be very different for me. I should be able to actually mail people out stuff on a regular basis and can give sort of better rewards. But yeah, so just concentrate on, like, definitely posting regularly. Keep people updated no matter what. That's super important. They want to hear from you, and just try to connect. Any ideas you have, going to be good ones. Do you think Kickstarter switching to crypto is going to hurt comic book self-publishing? Well, just to be clear, they're not switching entirely. They're just using that as an option. At least that's my understanding. But will it hurt them? I think to a degree it will. I'm not convinced that crypto is like a way of the future. I'm not yet. Maybe it will be, and I'll end up sounding like an old man. But money is based on something. As in, like, theoretically, if you wanted to cash it in, we keep a reserve of, for instance, gold. That has theoretically value to people. So we've got like a reserve that it's based on. And I'm not an expert here. I'm no economist. So don't take everything I'm saying like literally. I'm just trying to give like an overview. But crypto isn't based on anything tangible at all. I mean, it's decentralized, and it's virtual, and it's just computers like almost playing a game by themselves to mine for bits. So, it's not based on anything real. So some of the ways that it's used as a transaction, I could see some of that technology becoming a way of the future. No question there. Do I think that crypto itself is going to be around? Like, I mean, maybe, but only insofar as it's very much like trading stocks, except it's not even trading stocks, because trading stocks, you're still trading like certificates of value, ownership in a company. It's more like trading on the derivatives. And that's getting pretty deep in the weeds. You can read up on that in Google if you want, because I'm not the person to explain it. Suffice it to say, trading on derivatives is it's very close to essentially legalized gambling. You're sort of betting on whether something will do well, or a company will do well or do poorly, and you're betting on like how that will play out. You really are. And crypto kind of strikes me as that too. Certainly NFTs do, because NFTs, I don't like, there's no actual value at the end of the day there, and I think that those will definitely, I think that those for sure are a fad, and anybody like sort of buying them, like their only hope is to now sell it to another person that's willing to spend more on it, but at some point somebody's going to be left holding the bag. It's not going to actually increase in value forever, because there's nothing there. So anyway, money isn't really real either, just kind of a thing we all agree to get by on in our days. Well, there is, but like I say, there's a gold standard, here, and other countries have different standards. It's got something to back it up, first of all. It's also got a promise from the government to back it up. And finally, we use it to represent the value of what we have earned. Like, for instance, if I put in X number of labor, the company says, I am willing to, return to you this kind of a value. And we need a form to like sort of show that, since we're not like just trading goods constantly. So yeah, crypto has no entity backing it, whereas a government at least backs, their money. And yeah, you can argue, well, that's only as good as the government. And sometimes governments get in a lot of debt and inflation goes crazy, and all of a sudden the money seems to have a lot less value, or it can. But it's still based on something, and you've got like somebody backing it up at the end of the day. It's a little different, in my opinion. It's quite a bit different, in my opinion. Anyway, that was an interesting tangent that we got from talking about unions. So, not a lot necessarily known quite yet. That will be an interesting topic to follow, to see exactly where this new union goes and what it brings to the table for people in the comic book industry. I hope it ends up proving to be a good thing. I can understand theoretically the value. I just would love to hear what the specific reasons were for the employees at Image forming it, because I haven't quite heard that in specifics. I don't know. Thoughts on House of X, Powers of X, X-Men, Hickman? Well, I talked about it earlier, Rigoberto. I said I loved it. So, yeah, something I already talked about tonight. I don't want to repeat myself too much. What else? So that was definitely a big topic, though, because creators have been trying to form a union for, well, Jesus, going back to basically the 40s, probably. So it is interesting. It's interesting for like the implications of showing like that it's possible, but we need to see how it plays out in real life. What other news did we have? Let me open up my topics list. Oh, here's a fun one, okay? Let's go from something serious to something actually pretty darn goofy and weird. Bill Murray confirmed that he will play a bad guy of some sort in Ant-Man 3, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. So, let's speculate. Like, who would be a good character for Bill Murray to play? Let me propose a very outside-the-box idea. First of all, I don't think that they'd get... It's possible, but I don't think they'd get Bill Murray to, say, play MODOK or somebody that's sort of like a serious threat. They might. I think rather they'd get him to play somebody that's more of a rascal or a nuisance, like something more like that. And within the world of Ant-Man, my old buddy Robert Kirkman created a unique Ant-Man, Eric O'Grady. Eric O'Grady had like finagled his way into becoming a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, but he was fairly amoral. And he stole the Ant-Man technology and sort of used it for his own ends. And along the way, he became a slightly better person, because he sort of had to fill the role of hero from time to time. The reason I'm thinking like that is, like, what if Bill Murray played a version of Eric O'Grady that was more like a contemporary of Hank Pym, gives, for instance, Michael Douglas and Michelle Pfeiffer somebody to work against that's more or less sort of age appropriate and stuff. So kind of outside the box thinking on my part. I'm not basing that on anything specific. All we know is that Bill Murray said he will be in the next Ant-Man movie playing some sort of a bad guy. Exactly how bad, we don't know. So that's my totally random idle speculation. I'm curious who you think Bill Murray would be playing. Another variant of Kang, Impossible Man. He'll play Chevy Chase, yeah. Steve, thank you. Who's going to the Super Bowl? I will say the Patriots and the Buccaneers. But keep in mind I'm biased, being from Boston. But that's what I say. He could be Black Fox from the Kirkman Ant-Man run. Okay, yep. Could be. I think that they would be probably looking at something like the Kirkman run, because that's a more recent run. There's been other X-Men, Ant-Man moves since then, but who knows? Who knows? Who knows? Bill Murray for Egghead. They already had Egghead in the last movie. Egghead was Ghost's father, and he was played by Michael Cerveris in the flashbacks. So they've technically already had Egghead. He wasn't a big role, but they did use him. And I don't think that they'd have bothered naming him that if they had any plans to use him again. I think that was our one-and-done look at Egghead, being kind of a dum-dum and blowing things up and killing himself. Which, kind of accurate, to be honest, if you know Egghead. Kind of accurate. Cardinals. Maybe. They played well this past weekend. Are you going to do a video about Robert Kirkman? I know you did an interview with him, but I would like to hear you do a breakdown of sorts. Well, early on in my show, I did do both an episode about Walking Dead and one about Invincible. So, I've covered Kirkman before, and I tried to be objective. In fact, if anything, I may have been too harsh just because I'm close to it. But I like the animated show, and I might do another look at Invincible and what makes it so special. So never say never. I would like to talk about that some more. Scarlet Beetle, a talking red beetle, Ant-Man's other Silver Age nemesis. It could be. Don't know how likely that is for using somebody like Bill Murray, but maybe. But hey, I just mentioned Kirkman, right? And so let's talk about the elephant in the room as far as news goes this week. Robert Kirkman is being sued by a former collaborator, a really talented guy, colorist Bill Crabtree. And Bill's had been working with Robert for ages. Worked on tons and tons of stuff. But I guess he's now got a lawsuit saying he was promised sort of a bit of an ownership stake in Invincible in terms of getting paid. That's what he's claiming, and he's had a lawyer file a suit. And we shall see. Robert says, no, it was all work for hire. You signed something to that effect. And it seems like he did. I don't think that Bill can argue that he signed a work for hire agreement. Interesting note about this, the lawyer representing Bill Crabtree, same lawyer who represented Tony Moore when Tony sued Robert for ownership rights on The Walking Dead. I don't want to be negative, but it sort of makes me wonder, does this lawyer just sort of see dollar signs and or did Robert actually do something wrong? I don't know. The Robert I know has always been pretty much on the up and up, but Tony Moore's a really good friend too. So obviously there was stuff going on behind the scenes that I was never privy to. And I've never tried to really ask about that stuff because I don't want to ruin any friendships personally. Robert and Tony came to a settlement out of court, and since then they've appeared together at a Walking Dead event in their hometown, and Robert had Tony do a cover for, I think it was Walking Dead number 150. So, I feel like they got back on at least being able to talk to each other in a good way. But so I don't know what to make of this new lawsuit with Bill Crabtree. It seems like a lot to offer to a colorist, to offer him a bit of an ownership stake in Invincible, but it's possible. It's definitely possible. I just don't know what to make of it. Kind of sad when Image, the company founded on creator rights, keeps getting in lawsuits about not giving proper compensation to creators. Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong, Andrew. But people are people. I don't think that it represents Image as a company when, say, Todd McFarlane or Robert Kirkman has a lawsuit. And also, people do go after people that are successful. And both of those guys are supremely successful. So, who knows? Who knows? I don't know anything, to be honest. I don't have any inside knowledge, and it's not the kind of thing that I would ask because it's not really my business. Am I curious how it shakes out? Yes, but I'll be doing the same thing all of you are, just reading news articles and just seeing what the fallout is. But I want whatever's fair for everybody. I hope that there's a situation where things can end amicably. That would be nice. But I don't know. But it definitely felt like kind of the biggest news of the week to me. Lawsuits are dramatic, you know. So, gossipy type stuff. I don't love getting into I don't love getting into drama. I've always tried to avoid drama. You know, you're never going to see me like badmouth another YouTube creator. And while I may like review something harshly because I didn't think it was done well, I'm going to try to avoid, you know, personal conjecture on anybody. I'm not too interested in going down that road. Let's see. How many folks are in the chat? Because it seems to have all of a sudden gotten a little quiet. Oh, we've still got a good amount of viewers. Not a ton, but we've got over 50, so that's nice. I appreciate that. This channel's still growing, you know? This channel's still very much growing. If you have questions, please, you know, feel free to shout them out. I'll do my best to answer everything that I see. And obviously I'm looking down every once in a while to draw, looking back up to see what we can talk about. I've got some other news topics, though, that I can also address. Give me just a moment to feather in some of this hair. Wolverine's known for being a bit of a hairy boy. Who do you think should play Wolverine if they recast him in the near future? And I'm not saying that they necessarily will. I'm just saying, who would you want? Who do you think could fill that role? It's a tricky role to cast, I think. That helmet looks uncomfortable. Well, it was not voluntary that he had it on, so I don't think it was designed to be comfortable. It was designed to keep him under control while some scientists experimented on him. They were mean to poor old Wolvie. Looks like there was a question there, so let me look up in 2 seconds. I'm just spotting some blacks, and then I'm going to pop my head right up. It's going to be very dramatic. Here it is. Was that dramatic? Let's see. I know this has nothing to do with anything, but I was finally able to catch one of your live streams. I love your videos. Cheers from Brazil. Obrigado. Can you think of an artist who you didn't care for at first, but whose art grew on you with time? Absolutely. Jack Kirby is the first one that comes to mind. When I was younger, I didn't see the appeal in his art, and I don't know exactly when that changed. I really can't put my finger on the exact project that I saw, but at a certain point, I was like, damn, like Jack Kirby draws some really exciting stuff, and he's just a really creative, wild guy. I think that happens with a lot of comic book readers. I've heard that one about Jack Kirby quite a bit. And then there's probably some others that I'm not necessarily thinking of right now. It took me a little while to get into Will Eisner, but that one came. Myself or Danny DeVito for Wolvie. Danny DeVito might be a little old, so I choose you over that, Steve. Do I plan on making a video on Peter Laird? I think I would like to. Yeah. 70s era Clint Eastwood playing Wolverine. Yes, he probably, like, too tall? Maybe, but does he have the look? Yes, no question. No question. There's a lot of Clint Eastwood within early Wolverine. I'm sure he was a big influence for a while. Danny DeVito is Old Man Logan. Okay, all right. Now we're getting somewhere. Still maybe a little squat for a guy with a healing factor, but who knows? I found your channel earlier this month, and I've been binge watching your vids. Keep it up. Well, I will do my best, Peak. I'm trying to put out at least one video a week. Some of them may be a little shorter than others because it can take a while to do research on some of these topics that I address, but I am not planning on going anywhere. Thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate all the support from all of you. When we were young, 80s to 90s, Kirby seemed old, so we probably didn't appreciate it objectively. That's a possibility. It's a possibility. I also didn't like Kirby when I was young. I think it's common for some reason, but yeah, Danny DeVito is a honey badger. He's a cheetah man. Okay, yep. Just do it. Don't let my bones just be bones. Keanu Reeves is Wolverine. Again, maybe probably too old at this point. Also, I like Keanu a lot, but Keanu has a certain range, we'll say, as an actor. I think that that's fair to say, that he has a certain range. And I think that Wolverine has arguably a deeper required range than somebody like John Wick or Neo. I think that he can be very emotional. And that's a big draw for Wolverine. Who knows? Andrew with the super chat. Do European comics have the equivalent of a Jack Kirby or Osamu Tezuka figure? Absolutely they do. Absolutely. I think that the first one that comes to mind is Hersh. I think that the Tintin comics are hugely influential. And not just to, Belgian and French comics. I think that, and Mobius, a slightly more modern one. Mobius was also tremendously influential to Western comics. So yes, absolutely European comics have guys like that. Someday I'd like to talk about a guy named Hugo Pratt, Italian, I believe. Very influential also. So there's several. There's definitely several. You study any area that makes a bunch of comics enough, and you will find that there's been crossover appeal. Because good talent is good talent, and it makes an impact with people, But if I'm forgetting a big name, please, anybody in the chat, throw it out. You put me onto Daniel Warren Johnson, still haven't recovered from extremity. What a start to a career, for the most part, yeah. You got me to read Grant Morrison's Animal Man, which is probably my favorite superhero book ever. It's pretty out there, right? Isn't that an interesting one in terms of, wow, yeah. Animal Man, not necessarily a character you'd think would be that interesting, but Grant gave Animal Man an interesting personality and an interesting home life. I mean, when I think of a superhero with a family dynamic, Animal Man is now my go-to ever since reading Grant Morrison's Animal Man run. Glad to hear people are trying different things. That means everything to me because, I don't get paid for, some of these creators making their money. I just like to see people finding new and interesting things and realizing, hey, there's a lot to comics. I want to see the industry overall just continue to do well because I like reading comics. And the more people that know and like and talk up comics and try new things, the more likely I am to keep finding new things in the years and decades to come. Does Erge or Mobius have the range of Kirby or Tezuka? Yeah, I think so. I think that when you look at any of those, you can tell their art. What's important about each of them. Good storytelling, original characters and stories, and a unique viewpoint. And I think all of them do share that. Different ways. There's definitely a lot of differences that we could focus on as well. But I think that there's that they're all very important. Yeah. Appreciate all this chat. I'm not able to catch everything right now. As someone who grew up reading Ultimate Marvel, I was very surprised to see how you felt about it. I think how much I like Image edgier titles, Ultra Mega, for instance, as well as Donny Cates stuff. Didn't quite understand all of that, Pedro, but appreciate it. And Ultra Mega was a fantastic book. Fantastic. For me, when I got into comics, this is Wolf Wukong, I was crazy about Todd McFarlane art. I kind of was too. Art like Jack Kirby, John Buscema, and Steve Ditko's art seemed boring, but I came to admire and appreciate the artwork from them. Yeah, I think as a kid, you probably note like the sort of superficial style stuff more. And I'm saying like you all people, like when they're younger. I think that's just what catches our eye. Whereas like as we grow a little older, we can start to see how there's really good storytelling, panel to panel, not just a good image, but like a really engaging overall story by certain creators. And you see like just rock solid fundamentals of anatomy and backgrounds, and varying up what kind of a shot they're going to use so that nothing's too static. It's really interesting. Would I ever check out the IDW series for Sonic the Hedgehog? I guess if somebody bought me an issue, I might read it, but that's about it. At some point, when I feel like I've got a little more money, I'll set up a P.O. box, and if people want to send stuff for me to potentially, look at, I would do that. Right now, it's surprising how expensive post office boxes are. They're kind of a lot. I have some more news topics. I'll dig into that in just a sec. Let me just spot some more blacks, and then I'll just also double check on the chat room to see if there's any big burning questions from anyone, or anything that'll take me down a storytelling path, really. Have you read any of the book Chris Samnee was doing with his wife Jonna and the Impossible Monsters? No, but I'd be curious to read it. I haven't seen it. Let's see. When do you think we can expect a Topi episode? Oh, yeah, that would be good. I do like looking at international comics. I'll think about it. I don't know. Oh, all right. So this one is, to my knowledge, this is the first time a comic book character from the Star Wars comics has appeared on the in live action stuff. Now they've moved, obviously, like, if you watch The Mandalorian, you saw that they moved in some of the stuff from the animated shows, like Asako Tano, big one, right? Or Ashoka. I didn't watch the cartoons, so I forget exactly how to pronounce her name. So that was cool to see them sort of acknowledge the cartoons. They're absolutely canon. It's not just one way. We're going to bring characters from the cartoons into live action, just like we put live action stuff in the cartoons. The comics have kind of been similar, right? Like, the comics explore in greater detail a bunch of the different characters, but have we ever seen a comic book original character appear in live action? I don't believe we have until this past week. And it was a small thing. It was more of a cameo or something. But the Wookiee bounty hunter Black Krrsantan, who debuted in Darth Vader by Kieran Gillen as a writer, and Salvador LaRocca, I think, was the original artist. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that was the original creative team. Black Krrsantan went on to be a great supporting character for an extended run in Dr. Aphra. Just a badass, scary bounty hunter, and a Wookiee. Very different from Chewbacca, who, seems strong and tough and stuff like that, but, he's kind of a lovable teddy bear too. No, Black Krrsantan is not so nice. And we got to see a cameo of him on the Boba Fett show. And it was definitely him. He had his scar over his eye. He wore the gold armor, and he had his knuckles. Black Krrsantan fought in gladiatorial pits and had these spiked knuckles embedded into his hands. The Blue Twi'lek alias Sakura, Rise of Skywalker? Or Return of the Skywalker? Yeah. Oh, there's my sister. He looks awesome. He's a badass. He's big and strong. He looks like, he came from like a prison or something. Well, I guess he technically did, because he was a gladiator and he fought his way out of the gladiatorial pits, and now he's a bounty hunter. And in the comics, he originally worked for Boba Fett. Obviously now he works for some of the other Fett Hutts. Did I say Boba Fett? I meant Jabba the Hutt. I just realized what I said. Sorry about the confusion there. Anyway, cool character. Hopefully it was not just that cameo, and to go to the trouble of making that amazing character means that we will get to at least sort of see him have a fight or something with Boba Fett. I think that would be pretty cool. But great character. Black Chrysanthemum. He's scary. He's badass. He's what we used to probably think of Boba Fett back in, the Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi period. So I thought that was exciting. So somebody pointed out that I guess there was a minor Twi'lek character that appeared in a movie. So, okay, I didn't get that. Quinlan Voss is in a deleted scene. If he wasn't in there, I wouldn't quite count that. But okay, fair enough. So so not necessarily the first, but certainly this is a little bigger cameo, and I feel like he's got a good chance at showing up as like an actual sort of role, like at least in a fight of some sort. I feel like that's very possible, and so that would sort of it's just cool to see some of the comics you like. And you know what? All right, now I'm conflicted over how I'm going to say this. I was about to say it's cool to see them legitimized. That is the worst thing I could have said if I said that, because it's not true. I stopped myself. I love comics more than I like TV and movies. I do. That's why I make this show. I clearly love comics as my favorite overall storytelling medium. I do think it's cool to see a toy or a movie adaptation. I like that. I do. I don't like it more than the comic. Do I like Spider-Man No Way Home? Yeah, I thought I had a great time. That's a good, fun movie. Would I take that over the ability to read something like Kraven's Last Hunt? No. I want my Green Rabbit Jackson from the OG Marvel Comics Star Wars. Oh, I know, right? Marvel Comics Wizards versus Force Users. Who wins? I think I'd have to give it to somebody like Doctor Strange over, Obi-Wan Kenobi, for instance. Yeah. Oh, Revenge of the Sith. Okay, Revenge of the Sith had a cameo by somebody. Okay, cool. Have I checked out the new Zdarsky crime series Newburn? I've reviewed it on this very show. I like Newburn quite a bit. I think that Jacob Phillips is somebody to keep an eye on, no question. And I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure Jacob is the son of Sean Phillips, whose work I adore on stuff like Sleeper and Criminal. It would be a massive coincidence if I'm wrong on that, just because I definitely think he has a similar style, and that influence is there. Well, I didn't do it tonight, Froggy Woggy. It was whatever week the last issues of, Newburn come out. I always like new comics come out theoretically Wednesdays. I do my show on Monday. Gives me a few days to read the comics and stuff. I always review at the top of this live show the comics that I've read the previous week. And then I draw something, talk about the news of the week, take your questions. I'm still sort of explaining that because some people are checking out the show for the first time. Just want them to understand what I'm doing with this one. And by the way, I am loving doing this show, even if it doesn't get nearly the views that, say, a Comic Tropes episode does. For me, this is fun. This is my opportunity to talk with all of you, and especially in this day and age where I'm not going out with friends or even family very much anyway. This is a little bit of my socializing, and I think it's good for me, to be honest. I really do. His style reminds me of Mitch Gerads a bit. Yeah, I can see that. There's a certain sketchy quality to it that I could see. Sure. I am going to make this Wolverine a very hairy beast, just to be clear. I like my Wolverine the same way I like my Hulk. A hairy boy. Well, Gene, if you're still there, I'm glad that you were able to be up to date. And when we get a chance, we'll have to talk about stuff like Boba Fett, see what you think about it, where it might be going. I hope you had a good week. I know you've been really busy at work and stuff. So just know your brother loves you, and I always enjoy talking to you. Thank you for watching the show. That means a lot to me that you'll drop in and say hello. That means a lot to me. The way the ink and colors work together, especially the way they draw hair. Comparing Gerard's and Jacob Phillips. Yeah, I could understand that. Have you been keeping up with House of Slaughter? Yes, also reviewed that on this show. I like House of Slaughter. I think I think I like the current House of Slaughter storyline arguably even more than I liked the last arc of Something is Killing the Children. Not that it has to be a super big competition. I mean, it's all the same overall story. I'm just saying, yeah, I'm enjoying it. What do you think of Scott Eastwood playing Wolverine? Possibly. Yeah, possibly. I see where you're going with that. Yeah. I haven't seen him, act in a ton of stuff. I feel like the only thing I saw him for any extended amount was one of the Fast and Furious movies. So I'm not super familiar with his acting style and range. But, looks-wise and stuff, sure. The electrodes won't work if he's too hairy. But here's the scary thing about that, Christopher. Good point. But they weren't really electrodes. They, literally drilled into him to, inject the two metals that would, merge to become adamantium. So things like this aren't electrodes. They're, really, tubes that went into him. Just to confirm, Jacob Phillips is Sean's son. He's also the colorist on all of Sean's work after he stopped working with Betty Breitweiser. Oh, okay. Very cool. Very cool. Wasn't 100% sure. Thought that, but as soon as I started saying it, I was like, you know what? I might be assuming something. Couldn't remember if it was something I read or something if I had assumed. That's funny. So I talked about what books I read this week, and no DC books this week, but I will say this. 2 DC books have stayed in my head for the past, 2 weeks. Nightwing number 87. Wow. Again, a tour de force, groundbreaking piece of artwork. What a way to tell a comic book story. And second, Swamp Thing Green Hell. I really liked both of those. Super Chat. Gotta pause and see this. Thank you, James. Here's a little something for being consistently awesome. Sincerely. Thank you. James, thank you. That's very, very kind of you. That means a lot. That's really amazing. I just realized I have a space heater down here. I am turning that bad boy on because I am cold. Any thoughts on reemergence of comic speculation and FOMO? Oh, is that fear of missing out? So many channels focused on speculation and FOMO. I have noticed that. Look, it's always going to be a concern because I've seen what happened when the speculator bubble burst in the 90s. Okay, so I'm always going to have some concern. That said, I don't think, buying comics as a collection to potentially sell, I don't think that in and of itself is a bad thing. Some people, that's how they engage with the hobby or the medium, depending on what part of it is important to them. It's really when people that don't care at all about comics get into it for short-term gains that's the harm. And you can get some of that interest in that regard from casuals when there's a lot of entertainment just saying hey, this book is on the rise, and if you get this, it's going to pay off. Well, paying off for what a comics fan might be expecting out of a comic book that they buy versus what somebody buying it as an investment, that might be two very different things. So I don't think you'll ever see me do a show where I'm talking about the value of a comic, but I might mention things in passing, like I said. So this was a weird comic that I was talking about that I got this week, right? This appealed to me. I found it at a good price. So I will mention, like, hey, I found this back issue at what I consider a good price. Because I keep up to date with, like, things that I'm interested in, like what they're going for. Or at least I know where to look. Look this one up. The amount that it goes for is kind of stupid. That helmet was a story from 91. If so, it had, what, 16 bits processing power? Yeah, something like that. Do you or anybody else here visit any comic book review websites often? Certainly not often, no. Mostly I do sort of avoid reviews of comics because I just like to personally go in very clean with my opinions. I'm not saying I never look at reviews. I might look after I've already made an episode or after I've read something and I want to like sort of see how somebody else interpreted it. But it's not super common. Wow, Nikki, with the super chat. No comment, just a generous super chat. Thank you. Thank you so much. Wow. Certainly nice and makes my life a tiny bit easier, which is exciting. Means a lot to me. Thank you very, very much. I mean that sincerely. Checking cover price. Yeah, this one was given away for free, I believe, at the time, because it doesn't say it's 60 cents. It says a 60-cent value. That's just sort of what comics were going for at the time. So it just says it's a 60-cent value, but I'm pretty sure this was like a promotional thing that was given away at the time. But it actually goes for a little bit now, which is kind of hilarious. Where do you guys discover new music these days? Because it certainly isn't the radio anymore. It was when I was a kid, but like the radio is not where you're going to discover new music. Do you discover it off of like one of the streaming services, YouTube, TikTok? Like, I'm just curious, like where do you discover new music? Whoa, another super chat right in a row. Thank you, DCAM. Or DCAM. I don't know which way you pronounce it. Love your positivity. There's too many negative and biased comic channels, and you've really been fresh air for the past few years for me. Wow. Well, thank you. That's really nice to hear. It is. Compliments mean a lot to me. It's nice to hear that. You don't necessarily like get a lot of feedback doing YouTube in that it's not healthy to always read the comments. There's always going to be a certain amount of negativity that's like something you can't control. So I do look occasionally at the comments, but I don't dig into them. I don't read every single one. You can't, because again, there's going to be some stuff that like just attacks you on a personal level. There always will be. And it's not healthy for me to focus on that kind of stuff. Anyway, I do try to be a positive channel. I'll give like the occasional negative review because I think we can learn something from something that's not done well. But overall, there's a lot more in comics that I love that like is more worthy of my time as compared to talking about the stuff that I didn't care about so much. Music discoveries for me come from Spotify and friends, okay? I worked across the counter from a hip-hop music nerd, so I just ask them. Opening for concerts, YouTube, new music. Been listening to the Teal album by Weezer, new for me. Are you talking about the Blue album or something else? Was there a Teal album? Have you read any Eddie Campbell? If so, is he worth reading? I've certainly read From Hell, Eddie Campbell and Alan Moore. Am I remembering correctly that Eddie Campbell was the guy that did martial law? I'm going to look it up because I can't remember. Because I like martial law too, but it's been a minute since I've looked at that book, so I'm just double checking if I'm remembering right. I think I'm right. I'm looking. Oh. No, maybe he did some. I was thinking of Kevin O'Neill for some reason. That's terrible. In a way, they have some somewhat similar sketchy style, but yeah. I love this show. Well, that means a lot to me. Yeah, I guess I'd have to think. I haven't read a ton of Eddie Campbell. Let's put it that way. I haven't read a ton. Weapon X. I can't wait to someday do an episode about Barry Windsor Smith. Weapon X was the first time I really took notice of what Barry Windsor Smith could do, and it took me down a really lovely path, discovering all sorts of great stuff that he had done in the past. Just an amazing creator. Bacchus from Eddie Campbell is good reading. I haven't read that. I can say that for sure. I have not read it, but always appreciate recommendations, so thank you very much. Thank you very much. What's that? Oh, that's Andy Kaufman. Thank you very much. Alright. Seems like I'm getting quiet, so that's always my cue to go back to the topic list. The topic list. The topic list. Are we going to see some more Infotron soon? Well, you saw him on this channel. He told you everything there is to know about Batman. And it's possible Infotron could be back at some point in the not too distant future to discuss other comic book history. So that's definitely possible. Oh, here's one weird piece of news, but something that could, that we can all sort of get involved in. From today through Thursday the 13th, you can go to Marvel.com and vote on who the new member to the X-Men team will be. They've got a list of options. The team is locked in by the writer minus one character. Here are the options, okay? I'm going to read them to you. Armor. She was introduced back in Astonishing X-Men by artist John Cassaday and writer Joss Whedon. Avalanche. Traditionally was a supervillain, usually with the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, mostly the team led by Mystique. Avalanche. He can create rock slides and stuff. Bling. Bling can turn into sort of like a hard diamond body and throw crystalline projectiles. There's Gentle. Gentle is the first mutant from Wakanda, and Gentle can become proportionately more and more strong. I don't know if he could become stronger than the Hulk, but maybe. Micromax, you could vote for Micromax. Can shrink. Was a member of MI6, featured in back in the day in the Excalibur run. I want to say by who? All of a sudden, it's right on the edge of my the guy who came up with Next Wave. Who's that writer? British writer. Warren Ellis. I believe Warren Ellis created Micromax. Monet St. Croix, Penance. Debuted back in the pages of Generation X when that came out. She's always been an interesting character. Could add a lot of drama to the team. Very powerful. Siren. Siren has been around for ages. Same powers basically as Banshee. Just imagine if Banshee was a hot young lady. And she's appeared as sort of a supporting character in stuff like X-Force and Deadpool and stuff, but has never really been a main team member, so that could be new. And finally, somebody named Surge, and I don't really know who Surge is, but like, it's not Serge, it's Surge. Anyway, so those are your options. You can vote for, right now, if you want to go over to Marvel, you can vote for one of them to become the newest X-Men team member. Thank you for the compliment, Jamilin. That's really nice of you. I know art is subjective, but I'm interested in why some artists don't resonate with me. For instance, I don't care for John Romita Jr., but I'm not sure why. I do like John Romita Jr., but I'll also say it will depend on the exact thing that he's working on, because the more time he has to spend on something, the better he does. And when he rushes it out, sometimes it can look very weird and like cartoony in a way that like doesn't appeal to me. So I do understand to a degree, but I think he's done a lot of amazing work in the past on stuff like X-Men, Spider-Man, Thor. So I do like John Romita Jr., but not everything that he does. But I think that that's the case. Hey, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and even when somebody says they don't like my personal favorite artists, I don't take offense. I'm like, yeah, you know, whatever appeals to you is whatever appeals to you. It's nothing I can do. I can try to argue my case for what appeals, but I never expect everybody to agree with everything that I say. YouTube, Amazon, SoundCloud, Bandcamp for new music. Okay, sure. I'd say Penance. The Wakandan one sounds like an interesting power set. He's got a good look. Tari says, already voted. Terry, who did you vote for? Mind if I share a link to the vote? The page has some background info on the characters as well. Just voted now. I mean, if you want, I think it will automatically block a link, but if I see it here, I can try to approve it, but it's also going to fly by. So I think that the best way to find it is just to go to the Marvel website, and it's pretty obvious where you go to vote. Surge was in New X-Men like 05, after Morrison and before House of M. She has electricity powers, that's right, and bursts of super speed. I do remember Surge now. I had forgotten, but yeah. Like pretty much the most powerful, like, electrokinetic, I believe, is how she's been described. Michael, thank you! Congrats on monetization. It is nice. It is nice. I wish Glob was an option. Well, you'll just have to become a writer of X-Men yourself then. I didn't like JR Jr. at first, but then I realized I understood all his stories and couldn't make heads or tails of the guys who started getting big in the 90s. Well, there you go. Has anybody discovered any good new video games lately? I feel like there haven't been many A-list games released lately because, you know, probably everybody wants to promote the newest systems, but nobody has the newest systems for the most part, or not enough anyway. I'm just curious if there's any good new games that I've been missing out on. I don't have tons of time to play video games, but I do like video games. Starting to feel better. I've got like the heater on and at least my feet are starting to feel a little warmer. Hope you're doing good. I'm doing okay. I'm doing the best I can. I'm fighting some serious depression lately. I feel very overwhelmed with everything that I need to get done. Very overwhelmed with bills. But I am making progress, you know, like I'm doing the best I can. And one of the things that helps me deal with my depression is keeping busy. So I'm doing my best to keep busy, making episodes. I will say I'm very excited to share with you guys the next episode. I think I've had a few lately that have done very, very well. The Bob Kane video did well. that's somewhat predictable. It's kind of about drama, but the Hobgoblin video did better than I expected. And everything in the middle, from like, end of the year recommendations to the latest on shoujo manga, is performing just fine. So that's nice to see. I love it. Thank you all for giving me a shot. It means a lot to me. I think the next one has sort of that like mix of analyzing what a creator did well with some behind the scenes like exciting stuff that will make the next episode a pretty exciting one. I think it should be a big hit. Awesome Games Done Quick is happening now, raising money for the Prevent Cancer Foundation. Okay, I'll try to remember that and look that up. My brother got me Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm smiling ear to ear when playing it. Oh, really? That good? Too expensive, not enough quality products, maybe? Not new, but Don't Stop Talking and Nobody Explodes is an incredibly funny co-op game. Have you been cooped up at home a lot lately? No, not necessarily. I still have my part-time job that, like, requires me to work 4 days out of the week. Just not 5. So, and that job, I won't go into too much detail, but I sell cars, and it requires me to interact with people, my coworkers, customers, and I think it's good for me in a lot of ways. That I'm having those human interactions. I think it's really good, and it's part of why I'm still doing it. Even though I'm trying to make YouTube happen, I think it's overall a good thing for me to interact with people in that way. That's my socialization. We still have protocols for trying to be safe, sanitizing things, wearing masks, social distance. So overall, it's probably safer than say just hanging out at a friend's house or something like that. Even though I'd probably have more fun doing that. It's probably safer what I'm doing. Anyway, so I am getting out, and that job also requires me to move around quite a bit, so I think I'm getting I'm getting enough exercise. I really am. I did really enjoy the new Guardians of the Galaxy game. All right, I got to keep this in mind. I'm not a manga guy, and I loved that episode. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all the compliments. Thank you, Dan. Metroid Dread is pretty great. Been playing the Spider-Man Miles Morales. I played that one. Yeah, that was short. I played that a while back. That was good, but yeah, kind of short. I hope the chat has been a good one. I just finished work, so I can have a listen along now. Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for joining us, Joe Dent. Whenever I see your name, I can't help but think of, characters from Harvey Dent to Clark Kent. Just got a name that sounds like a comic book character. Joe Dent. Sounds like a pulp character, in his spare time. Joe Dent is the Spider's Shadow, who, along with his nephew, fights crime. Whoa, Steve! Super chat. Do you remember most of us regulars on streams? I don't know if I remember most. Definitely, names like yours sound familiar, and I start to get a small idea of, what appeals to some people over time. Any names that look familiar, I have good associations, with when I see the name. I don't think that I have anybody that comes in regularly and is, calling me an idiot or, being mean or anything. So, anytime I recognize a name, it's like a little serotonin burst of oh yeah, that person, that's awesome. I hope that makes sense. So yeah, I have to remind myself the same way that I'll probably you guys should remember. To a degree, it's a little more of a one-way street. You guys probably you see me more. I'm the one with the microphone. I'm the one that's talking, and you sort of must feel you know me more than I get to know each of you. But then again, you're also seeing sort of a curated version of me, right? Like, you're seeing me presenting myself carefully to talk about, like, something we all like. Interesting question. That made my night. It made me larf. Good. I'm here mostly every week. I definitely see your name every time, Black Phoenix. And some of you guys have like an icon beside your name as compared to a letter. And like visually, like I start making that association as well. A parasocial relationship. It is a parasocial relationship. Not that that's a negative thing, but yeah, it's a parasocial relationship. Which I'm actually not a full expert on, but I definitely have heard enough to know that that's what we've got going on here. That's what we've got going on here. What we have here is a parasocial relationship, I do believe, milady. Y'all got one of them parasocial relationships, if I had to posit a guess. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just doing a weird sort of Southern gentleman voice. Do you think it's weird to remember lyrics to a Duran Duran song that you haven't heard in like 30 years, but be bad with names? No, I don't. Because I'm bad at names. I'm very bad at names. And we all learn in different ways. And we all have like different senses that we sort of like and trust more than another. So for instance, some of us do better learning and remembering things when we hear it. Some of us do better when we write it down. It's a tactile experience. And some of us, it's visual, like what we see, if we focus on it, we remember. So, that doesn't explain exactly why some of us have trouble remembering names. But I'm just saying, first of all, we each have a way to remember things. But that might still require some reinforcement of some sort. And a name is just like brief. And you have like that one moment to sort of like trust that to your brain as compared to like trusting it to some sort of outside source or something. So a song you can like listen to passively several times and eventually it just, boom, now you know it. Whereas like a name, you're maybe only encountering that one time and then like hopefully remembering it. I don't know if I made much sense with that one, to be honest. I feel like I sort of lost my full train of thought as I explained all that. Oh well. Maybe you got the gist of what I'm saying. Or maybe I'm a nut. I don't know. Reminds me of the eucalyptic elephant chair guy's voice. Oh, yeah! Excuse me, you all got them eucalyptic chairs? Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Probably not. There's an actor named Johnny Pemberton. You've probably seen him in a couple things. For instance, if you like comic book movies, he was in the first Ant-Man movie. He went into Baskin Robbins. And instead of asking for ice cream, he was asking Scott Lang for like a cheeseburger or something like that, or a smoothie. Anyway, that kid. And he's been in a bunch of stuff. He's a pretty funny comedian. He also used to be a guest on a podcast that was called The Bone Zone by two very funny comedians who I guess at some point had, unfortunately, like a falling out, and they stopped making their podcast. But my favorite part of that podcast was every week they'd have a guest, first of all, that they'd interview and talk to, but then they'd all do a long-form prank phone call. They'd call like a store or something like that. And in one, it's really funny. You can look this up, by the way, on YouTube. Look up Bone Zone prank phone calls. They did so many. And yeah, it does sort of sound like Bob Odenkirk. You're right, because Bob Odenkirk used to have a southern gentleman that would sometimes be a lawyer, and sometimes he was more of a senator. Anyway, in this one call, it's so good. Johnny Pemberton calls up what are those stores that just sort of sell like all sorts of weird furniture and home decor? I want to say something like Pier 44. You recommend Venture Brothers? You'd love it. I've seen Venture Brothers. I'm excited. They're going to make a movie, like a TV movie to wrap it all up. I'm excited. I love Venture Brothers. I mentioned it in my episode about The Tick because Ben Edlund is the only guy who wrote an episode aside from creators, the two creators. I know about Venture Brothers. Anyway, so he calls up and he's just like, y'all got one of them eucalyptic chairs? You know, it makes a sound like an elephant. And they're like, I don't know if we have that. And like, you should have hung up on the guy already. But they're on the phone for at least like half an hour listening to him ask for a eucalyptic chair. And they start playing these sounds of like what do you call it? An elephant just like, trumpeting really loud, like the guys on the podcast. The whole time. And he's like, it sounds like that. I want one like that. Pier 1 Imports. World Mark. Yeah. Pier 1 Imports. Everybody corrected me. It is. And, oh my God, it's so good because it just goes on forever. And they like talk to managers and they try to look up stock numbers that they're just making up. And it's like, folks, come on. Like, you gotta be smarter than this. But I love their prank calls, man. They would always call the two hosts and say, like, tell somebody that they were twin brothers, but they were born on separate days, and, like, present that as, like, the most interesting trivia fact in the world. He's like, I was born at 11:59, but my brother Randy was born at 12:01, so we're actually born on different days. Isn't that amazing? And the person on the other end would invariably be like, oh, yeah, that's interesting. I remember one time they called a place in Las Vegas to get married, and they were like, we're brothers, but we want to get gay married. Would that be something you'd be willing to do for us? And they're like, no, sorry, like, we can't marry brothers. No, like, that would be illegal. No, I can't do that. And they're like, well, I heard that, like, whatever happens in the air, there's no, like, governing body. So, like, what if we jumped off of the diving board together into the pool, and then that split second when we're in the air, but before we hit the ground, could you, like, marry us that fast? Could you have, like, everything ready to go? And the guy's like, no, I can't do that. But they talk to these people for, like, half an hour. Prank calls seem mean-spirited. Maybe you're right. I still find some prank calls funny. They can be mean-spirited, but I am a simple man. Some of them make me laugh. You're not wrong. But anyway. If you're curious what I'm talking about, and maybe you're not, maybe you agree that like what I'm describing just sounds like it's wasting people's time. But if you think that might be funny, all I can say is look up The Bone Zone. It was an old podcast. I don't think the podcast itself is archived anywhere anymore. I think that the creators took it down, but a lot of like fans uploaded some of their best prank calls online on YouTube. The Jerky Boys didn't age well in my opinion. It's called The Bone Zone. There was old, what was it? Oh, yeah, Crank Yankers. I didn't like Crank Yankers too much. So you're right. Like, sometimes I don't like prank calls, I guess. Like, because I don't like some of this. Wow, Daniel with the super chat. So I got to pause, see what this says. Love your channel. It taught me to think more critically about comics. Do you have a moment in your life when you said, yeah, comics is my thing? I mean, I probably did. So let me give that some thought. Like, when would that have been? Comics are my thing. That's a bit of a head scratcher, Daniel. I mean, I can think back to like when I started reading comics regularly, but like when I decided that like, that was something that I absolutely loved is a little harder to put my finger on. It was likely somewhere around the time that I started reading Batman and Spider-Man regularly in like late 89 or 1990. I'd read comics a little bit before that, but somewhere around there, it was just like when I couldn't wait until I went each week to pick up new comics. You know, like, so it was somewhere in that sort of range for me. And I can't speak to, like, you know, a particular comic where I'd say, like, you know, this was some of the best comic book storytelling ever. It wasn't really that. It was just that I was really just getting into following the stories on a regular basis. And it was superhero stuff for the most part. But I did read a little bit of everything. Oh, I got a piece of mail. Oh, my fiance says that Steve sent a super chat that I missed. Steve, my apologies. That is not what I aim to do. You gave me a $2 super chat. I read his note, but forgot to thank. Okay. Thank you. And thank you, Chrissy, for telling me. Folks, it does mean a lot to me if you are sending a super chat. It, like, you know, 99 cents, $5, doesn't matter. It means a lot to me. Thank you. Thank you very much. How long have you been drawing? I've always drawn, but I don't have any formal training. You know, I'm just always sort of trying to get a little bit better. Let's do the mouth because I need to spot some blacks in here, and I think it'll add a little more definition to the full drawing. I think that this is where I need to focus my efforts for a moment right now. When you plan on getting married? No firm plans. We've been engaged for a long time. All I can say is I am up for doing it as soon as possible. Like, if Chrissy, if you're listening, like, you know, I'm up for getting married, like, you know, this week or something. Let's do it. Let's make 2022 the year that let's just go to, like, Craig and Rochelle's elopement chapel and get married. I want to do it. We shall see, though. We shall see. We're very busy. Loved him in Ant-Man. Think he was that egg kid in The Watch as well. Yeah, he was in The Watch. Yeah, he was. The Truth podcast had a scripted episode about pranking a prank call show, and it got really dark. They fake a mental breakdown, then play it off as fun and games. Oh, that's kind of mean, yeah. Huh. Have you set up like a PayPal tipping link? Some other people I watch stream on here have one, as it takes less of a cut than Super Chat. Yep. If you want to look right up here on your screen, this says you can send a one-time tip anytime you want at Ko-fi. That's ko-fi.com/comic tropes. And I get all of that. They don't take a cut. So if you wanted to, you don't have to. I would never ask you to go out of your way, and I definitely don't want anybody to feel like, you know, pressured to do something like that. That would make me feel quite bad. Just saying it can help me right now because not exactly struggling, but I definitely have some extremely high bills to pay. At the beginning of 2021, I got sick with COVID. And my out-of-pocket deductible for that was $6,000. I instantly, like, hit that. Like, you know, in a day, basically. So I came out of the hospital, and I had $6,000 plus some other fees. And then I got hit with taxes from YouTube because they don't take taxes out. And I hadn't realized quite like how little they take out, so I had to pay all my taxes all at once. Like, and I had a big tax bill. I don't want to say the number, but it was big. So I got hit with those two things right at the same time in spring, and then just like a month or so later was when that air conditioning unit that I was talking about exploded because of the heat, and that we're looking at, like, you know, like $20,000 to fix. So basically, right at the beginning of 2021, I get hit with 3 massive, massive bills all at once. And hey, I'm not giving a sob story like, oh, woe is me. It happens. That's life. I'm sure each of you have gotten hit with like big bills too. Just explaining like what I'm dealing with. I'm slowly getting out ahead of it. I finally paid off all the medical bills the other day, or at least most of it, I should say. I've got one like charge pending for them, and then I've got almost all my credit card paid off again. It's just tough. It's just tough. But we all have it tough. Don't worry. I'm not trying to act like I've got it any tougher or rougher than anybody else. And I'm going to be okay. Absolutely. Was it Infotron that damaged the furnace? Oh, I didn't even think about that. Maybe it was. Was it you, Infotron?
Bitty, bitty, bitty. Wasn't me.
Wow. I thought you sounded much different than that.
Bitty, bitty, bitty. Let's dance.
You weren't vaxxed when you got COVID, right? I wasn't eligible to be yet. I wasn't eligible to be. And Chrissy and I hadn't like gone out and seen any friends, any family. We hadn't gone out to any restaurants. So I must have gotten it at work. You know, I was wearing a mask and keeping distance, but that's the only place I possibly could have gotten it. You know, I was still out in the public, and I wasn't quite eligible for getting vaccinated yet. And so I got it, and it was really, really bad, and I wouldn't want anyone to go through that, no matter what they think about the vaccination or anything. I would strongly recommend getting vaccinated because I came close to dying. I was in the hospital for over a week in very serious condition, very, very serious. And it was really, really, really bad. And I'll be honest, I don't remember all of it because I was so in and out of it. Like literally, I didn't tell anybody this, but literally like about 2 weeks ago, all of a sudden I started having these like intense flashbacks of like just a moment in the hospital. And it's definitely like sort of a post-traumatic stress disorder thing, and I'm sure other people have it worse. So again, I'm not trying to like make it like too dramatic, but it's intense. Like I'll just have a flash of being there in the hospital, having like blood drawn, like struggling to breathe, doctors like sort of rushing in and being like, oh, your numbers are bad. Steve, you can stop giving super chats tonight. You've been incredibly generous. It means everything to me. All good. Super chats for days. Thanks for the stream. Happy to provide it. Happy to provide it. But thank you. That's very, very kind of you. Means a lot. I acknowledge you. You're great. I'm off work till next week. Kind of glad, but also pissed because I got a $500 car insurance payment. That is big. That is big. I'm sorry. Oh, in my job, you know, I sell a car, and sometimes somebody has to set up their first insurance policy. We don't sell insurance, but they have to, you know, get it done and give me the details on what they elected. And, you know, sometimes they'll just tell me. And I did, like, before I worked in selling cars, I just didn't realize how expensive car insurance can be for people, especially young people without much credit, especially young people that without much credit that have possibly been in, like, you know, a reported accident. It makes a big difference, and it's tough. Yeah, like a $500 payment. That's a lot. Just for laughs, would you consider doing a video on the Garfield strip? You know, I would consider it, A-Man, but there is a funny video out there where they talk for like over an hour analyzing a single Garfield comic strip. And obviously they're like, it's satire, but they are seriously like examining it from every angle and treating it like it's the funniest comic strip and like the most important thing in the world. And I'm like, well, what could I do about Garfield specifically that would ever be better than that? If you look it up, it's over an hour of analysis on a single Garfield comic strip where Garfield takes John Arbuckle's pipe and smokes it. It's so dumb. That's scary, dude. My dad got hit by it hard, too, but he made it out. Glad you're still here. I'm glad I'm still here. I'm super depressed right now, but I'm also like glad that I'm here. It's weird to deal with depression, folks. It doesn't make 100% sense. Is your house still cold at the moment? Oh yeah, my house is very cold right now. It's not quite freezing. If it was, I'd have like, the water running so that my pipes don't freeze, because that would be very expensive. But, it's been about, it's been in the high 30s to low 40s here lately. And so inside it'll be like more like high 40s, maybe low 50s. PTSD is no fun. Glad you're doing better. Infotron versus Starscream. Thank you, Andrew. Very kind of you. Let's see. Infotron versus Starscream? Yeah, I'm going to say that this 1950s-esque robot who just seems to be a chubby, wobbly guy who can look up information would lose to the gigantic robot that can transform from a jet into an angry killer robot armed with null rifle lasers. So, yeah. Interesting, Black Phoenix. I haven't heard about that. What internet did to Garfield. Okay. Quentin Reviews did a pretty good video on it. He found Jim Davis. Oh, yeah, you know what? I saw that Quentin Reviews episode about Garfield, I think, that you're talking about. Yeah, the old Jim Davis strips that he did right before Garfield and stuff that, like, have some of the same jokes and ideas. Interesting that it was Garfield that, like, took off for him, all things considered. I grew up with this weird newsprint flipbook Garfield book where he was a ripped superhero. Whoa, I never heard about that. Tom King's Mr. Miracle displayed PTSD almost perfectly, says Bruce Matthew Wind. Did a good job. I liked his Mr. Miracle quite a bit. I thought that was a very well done comic. Yeah. And I've heard that, like, he explores some of the similar types of things in Strange Adventures. I've heard Strange Adventures with Adam Strange that he's doing these days is actually very, very good. But I haven't read it yet. I do intend to at some point, because it sounds like it's gotten a good amount of acclaim. Talk about fear of missing out. What if I missed out on that one? What would be the deal? What's the deal? What's the deal with missing out? I mean, did you miss or are you out? What's the deal? Kramer, you missed out on the deal. I'm just doing that voice, I guess, to amuse myself. And you have my sincerest apologies. None of you deserved that. And we're all a little worse for having listened to it. Any stories about Bob Saget? Oh, my sister. I never met Bob. I did like his stand-up. I never saw Full House. I know that's what he's best known for, and that's fine. I never watched that show. But his stand-up was funny. His roasts were funny. He seemed to be good friends with Norm Macdonald, another comedian who I really admired that we lost last year. Unexpectedly. Yeah, that was sad. I didn't expect that. Well, nobody expected it. Apparently it was like a heart attack out of nowhere. He had been doing stand-up like that day. 29 Garfield books. Ooh, that's a lot. Garfield is the greatest. Everybody hates Mondays. Okay. Ow. Picked up Strange Adventures, but haven't read it yet. Heard good things about King's Rorschach, but I'm a little conflicted. Same here, James. Same here. I've heard good things about it, but I'm like, I didn't want to necessarily support that. Certainly not when it was new, because, I just don't think it was right how DC sort of betrayed Alan Moore's confidence. He thought that he was getting the rights back for that. And, he signed a contract and that's that. But it bothers me. And so I just didn't want to support it. But now that it's out, if I'm not ordering it like new, I'm not going to help DC anymore, but I could help my comic book store by buying their back issue or their trade that they've already ordered. So maybe I'll read it now. That was what I did for Doomsday Clock. I didn't really want to support that one, but I was curious to read it. Ultimately didn't really care for it personally, but nothing wrong with supporting my comic book store and buying the original issues if they now have them just sitting there languishing in inventory. Languishing, that's a little too dramatic. Yeah, I don't have any real stories, Gene, but definitely was sad that Bob Saget passed away out of nowhere. Kind of like how this drawing's coming out. It's I know a lot of professional artists could do this a lot faster, and probably do better things with the inking, but this is fun for me, just relaxing, inking, just chatting with people. I like this, and hopefully if I keep doing this as a regular show someday, I start learning how to do it better. That's the goal. What did you think of the Watchmen show? I thought it was immensely overrated. I thought it was quite good, actually. I liked that. Again, I was conflicted about it, but, it was made. Read Peter Cannon Thunderbolt by Boom. Kinda wish there is an Ozymandias book now. That's cool. Or should I say, very cool. Yeah. It's very cool. I don't have a lot of time for watching TV, but I'll watch a little bit. And the thing that Chrissy and I binged recently was Cobra Kai Season 4. And I don't know about you guys, I liked it a lot. Wow. That show keeps surprising me with how good it is. It's it's a little corny and stuff, but they do good twists with the drama, in people changing alliances and things like that, and having different personal problems that they need to resolve. And the karate is pretty entertaining to watch. They do a good job with the stunts overall. So I don't know if that's your thing, but I liked it. I liked it a lot. Being from good old England, we have never had many comics to choose from, but the newspaper syndicated strips, Garfield, George Bassett, Peanuts, Calvin and Hobbes, have always been readily available. Oh, interesting. Interesting. Cobra Kai. Yes, loved Season 4. I can't wait. Apparently they've, as of last month, they finished filming Season 5. I don't know when they'll finish, editing it, doing all the post-production and getting it out, but I guess they've finished Season 5, and the showrunner said that they did not write it as though that would be the final season either. So they've got a lot of story to tell, and seems to be doing very well for Netflix. So, yeah. Have I read Multiversity Pax Americana? It was a head scratcher at first for me. Not yet. I need to. I definitely need to. And I understand why you're bringing that up now. Yeah. What time is it? Oh my goodness! It's already been 2 hours. That flew by. Well, I'm about to wrap things up then. Let me do a few more details that were important to me. This is one I think maybe I'll just finish on my own time, because I want this one finished actually, and I'm really not there yet. I've only sort of done the head and this tiniest bit of the chest. I had all these ab muscles mapped out, and then what do you call it? I mapped it out. I light boxed it, had it nice and clean here. Thought it was going to look good. I think it is starting to look good. But I'm not going to be able to finish all of it tonight. So I might keep working on this one on my own time because I want to finish a drawing. But I'm probably going to wrap this up in just a minute. If you have any final questions or thoughts, now would be the time to throw that in here, and I'll do my best to read it. My sister says she loves Johnny. He's interesting, isn't he? He's funny, too. He's just so dumb about technology and modern stuff in a very funny way. Yeah, I like Johnny, too. Very easy to root for him. Even if he's not perfect. That makes him more interesting. Really shows you how, like, you know, characters need to have flaws to be interesting. Ever thought of doing an episode on the influence of the mecha genre that it has had on Japanese comics in general? Hadn't really considered it. It's a possibility. It's always a possibility. Right now, I wouldn't consider myself necessarily an expert on mech stuff. So I'd probably have to, you know, sit down, do some research, formulate some opinions, if I were to go that route. But I am excited for the next episode, folks. I sincerely think everyone will like this one, whereas, you know, I knew that the shoujo manga, I thought that was a long shot that would get, like, a lot of traction. It was just something that I kind of felt passionate about, and for me to stay engaged in the channel and continue to do episodes that hopefully people like, I gotta do whatever, like, you know, excites and interests me. Do you think it would be cool if Marvel and DC published more black and white comics? Yeah, absolutely. Back in the day, they used to each sort of do some magazines where they could do sort of, like, stuff aimed at, like, older audiences. And, like, you know, the Hulk book and the Conan book, for instance, were both really, really good. So yeah, I'd be all for doing some, like, black and white stuff. Maybe a little cheaper to produce. Maybe could aim it more at the magazine market and get, like, distribution in some channels that haven't really been available for comics in a while. Bring some new readers back to comics. I think that would be actually a really strong idea. All right, seems like my message didn't come across right. It didn't? Ever thought of doing an episode on the... I mean, all I can say is I don't feel like I'm an expert, that's all. I appreciate the question. It's definitely something I could do. It was an excellent video. That's nice of you. That's nice of you. Well, thank you, everybody, for... This has been one of the best shows. I think we had some interesting topics. I've had a good time drawing tonight, and you guys were very generous with super chats as well, so thank you again for stuff like that. That means a lot to me. And yeah, thank you for the questions and the comments and stuff. It really kept everything very lively tonight in a great way. Everybody was really positive, like, got some recommendations for things for each other. Just really, really positive evening, and thank you all for making it that. It means a lot to me. I had a good one. Hopefully you had a good time hanging out. And I hope that some of you can, you know, talk to each other online. Keep in mind that, like, you know, you can always go to the Comic Tropes Discord or Facebook groups to talk more with each other about anything regarding comics. That's always an option. Just want you to know that. And yeah, I'm going to keep sort of pecking away at this on my own time. And get back to work on the next Comic Tropes episode, because this one definitely is going to require a lot of research. There's a lot of history that I'm trying to distill into something manageable while still having the appropriate references and images and stuff. It's going to be a bit of a complex one, but I think everyone will like it a lot. So I've got a lot to do. Thank you again. I had a great time. I'm going to take off now, but until I see you next time, keep reading comics, and don't worry, you're going to see me first, because you'll see the Comic Tropes before the next week's live stream. Thanks, everyone. Happy 2020.